3 weeks remain in the regular season, and teams are jockeying for position for the conference tournament. This is the NEC On The Run Hoops podcast, and it's coming to you next. John Kelly Jr. alongside Ron Ratner for this NEC On The Run Hoops podcast for men's basketball. Ron, there's never a dull week in NEC basketball. Robert Morris within a half game of Bryant for first, and LIU Brooklyn's now in the fire.
Yeah, what a time of year this is. February. I'm all pumped up because we're steamrolling towards March, and the race is tight. It's always tight at this time of the year usually. You have Bryant, who's 9-2 record. They're still rolling. They're playing well. And you knew Robert Morris was going to be there in the end, and they're a half game out. And LIU, they struggled early. They've kind of figured it all out, so they're a game and a half back. And you have Sacred Heart and Wagner right there, all trying to get spots in our top four. And I say top four because the NEC regular season has more meeting maybe than any other conference in America. There's so many little battles going on. You have the battle to get into the top 8 because only 8 teams will qualify. Then there's who's going to make the top 4? You make the top 4, you host a quarterfinal game. And then if you win the regular season, you have the opportunity to host, if you keep winning, 3 games and play that ESPN final on your home court. And NEC history, if you look at it, is that it's very rare with this format that a team comes out and wins games all the way through on the road to win the tournament. So you got to host it. This last 3 weeks is going to be a dogfight.
Ron, Jamal Olasawir, it's been a banner season for him. Program history, he's just moving up the charts and scoring. NEC Choice Hotels Player of the Week. And, we got to see those dunks. Now someone else is taking notice.
Yeah, ESPN has made him a nominee for their State Farm Slam Dunk Contest. It takes place in the Final Four in March. And if you go to the LIU website, they'll direct you to vote on Facebook to have Jamal in as one of the dark horse candidates to be in the contest. So that's always fun. But I'll tell you, look, the kid, I've watched him for 4 years now. He's unguardable. He's so strong. His leaping ability is through the roof. He's got a point guard who can get him the ball. And now he's, when you get to be a senior, you start looking at, okay, where is he going to rank in the history of the NEC in this category, in that category? So, there's a stat that we came up with, and courtesy of Dan Lobaz over at LIU had asked me about it. Has any player reached these numbers? And I looked at the numbers: 1,600 points, 800 rebounds, 100 assists, 100 blocks, and 100 steals. Seems like the random stat. But when I did the research, only one other player in the history in 32 years had ever even gotten to that point, and that's Ken Horton, who was a Player of the Year from the Central Connecticut a couple of years ago. So you can kind of see, where he is. He's about to enter the top 5 at LIU in scoring. He's about to enter the NEC top 10 in rebounding. The kid's an all-star, and he's had a heck of a career.
Well, head coach Tim O'Shea of Bryant has done a complete 180 in 2012-2013, a 14-win gain. They set a program record for conference wins, and they've been ranked multiple times in that mid-major poll.
Yeah, 7 straight weeks was one of the top 25 teams in the nation. Checking in at 22 this week, and deservedly so. We've talked about what they did non-conference. The 14-win turnaround is the best in the nation. So, again, it got me to thinking, well, let's put it in a historical conference perspective. So their 14-win improvement in the history of this conference, only one team has had a better year-to-year game than they have, and that was Central Connecticut back in 1999. They went from 4 wins to 19 wins and made the NEC championship final for the first time. And even if you look at league play, they've bumped up 8 games this year. Only LIU, the first year they won the championship in '97, they went from 5 to 15. That was a plus 10. So they could still break both those records. There's plenty of time left in the season, and it's been a real nice year. And the fans have taken notice up there. They're packing the Chase Center, and it's a lot of fun watching it as it's unfolding.
exciting when it's their first year to qualify for postseason history. Robert Morris, 8 consecutive winning seasons, Ron, since they began in this conference in 2007, 2008. I think the record over that time reflects consistency.
Yeah, it's the second longest streak in league history, 8 straight years with a winning record. And, that's actually spanned 3 different coaches. And it's hard at this level, I think, to maintain that consistency. You'll often see teams kind of peak with a real good senior class, then rebuild for a year or two to get back where they want to be. But Robert Morris has been doing it year after year. And Mike Rice really got the ball rolling, and Andy Toole's taking it to another level now. And I looked at their conference record. In the last 102 games in the league, they've won 80 of them, 80-22. I mean, that's a remarkable thing to do in any league at any level, and they got it going right now. And I think that not only that, I think they're positioned to keep the run going in the future. So we'll see what happens. As they hit the postseason, they won 2 straight championships. Then they made the NEC title game the next 2 years. We'll see what's going to happen in 2013.
Well, those NEC rookies always make an impact on the hardwood. One's had an opportunity to get the honor 2 weeks in a row. Siobhan Wiggins.
Yeah, Siobhan Wiggins, he can play. Oh, he's a good player. Mount. If NEC fans will remember, a few years ago they had a point guard from Charlotte named Jeremy Good, who was an all-star in this league and ranks at the top of a lot of our all-time lists. Now they got another guard out of Charlotte, Siobhan Wiggins. He's a 4-time Rookie of the Week winner. He can put points on the board real fast, and I think they got a good one there. And as Jamie and Christian builds the program, he's one of those guys you can build around. You have E.J. Reed from LIU. He's won the award 3 times. He fits perfectly in the system. He's a freshman. He's getting some tutelage from the Julian Boyds and the Jamal Lassawirs. I think he's going to be a real good one for them. And then I started looking around at the league, and then you have other freshmen just starting to pick it up now. Wagner's got Eric Fanning. You have Darius Tate and Tevin Falzone from Sacred Heart. You have Steph Mosley over at St. Francis U. He's a really good player. Sekou Harris at FDU. Stephen Hawkins from Robert Morris. So these are the guys that are, that we will be building this league around in coming years. And it's good to see him getting some run and putting up numbers.
And obviously on TV, you'll get to see Mount St. Mary's and Central Connecticut. And Ron, what interests you about this matchup?
I think you get to see, first of all, I like watching Central Connecticut because they have some dynamic players there in Kyle Vinales and Matt Hunter. Then on the other end of the slate, you have the Mount Mayhem and, them playing at home in front of I think it's going to be a nice crowd this week. I think it has the makings of, sort of a up and down the court. You might see some points in the game. It's a doubleheader. We have a women's game as well. And I think one of the cool things we're going to have at the game is Vanessa Blair, who's she was just inducted into our Hall of Fame. We're going to be interviewing her. She's a head coach now at Bethune-Cookman. She's coming up for the game, and they're having a big celebration with women in sports at Mount St. Mary's. They've had a real rich history in women's sports, so I think it's going to be a special day down there, and we look forward to it. The men playing at 11:30, and the women 2 o'clock after them.
Well, thank you so much, Ron. That's it for this NEC On The Run Men's Hoops podcast. For Ron Ratner, I'm John Kelly Jr. John Kelly Jr. and Ralph Ventry for the NEC On The Run Women's Hoops podcast. And Ralph, Mother Nature kind of got in the way of the plans in conference play.
Well, it sure did, John. As you know, this Nemo hit the Northeast this past weekend, and it affected us because things are uneven now. Usually we play Saturday, Monday, each team with 2 conference games a week, and it comes out nice and even, nice and neat after Mondays. But unfortunately, some teams play 2 games. Some teams have yet to play. Quinnipiac, our league leader, is still 10-0 in Northeast Conference play. They haven't had a game in 9 days. They'll try to end that hiatus against Central Connecticut on Wednesday night. Meanwhile, Sacred Heart, also located up in Connecticut, they had games postponed. They finally played a game against FDU on Tuesday night. Ed Swanson got his 400th victory with the Pioneers win in that one. So Sacred Heart is still in second place, sole possession of second. Quinnipiac is still in first, but like I said, the schedule is a little uneven now. Things are a little messy, but once the makeup dates get hammered out, we should be recovered. So,
Well, at the bottom, as we know who's at the top in women's basketball, a lot of contenders. Let's start with St. Francis Brooklyn. The Terriers trying to get to the playoffs for the first time in 5 years, and they're pushing away.
Yeah, well, it seems like the last few weeks we seem to be talking about John Thurston and the St. Francis Brooklyn Terriers. And from what it looks like, that's not going to change. The Terriers don't seem to be going away, John. They only seem to be getting stronger as the season goes on. They're 7-5 now in Northeast Conference play, more than doubling their conference win total from the year before. Really a phenomenal job by John Thurston. They have a few young players who are really getting it done. Sophomore Sarah Benedetti, she's a big-time shooter, and really she's come of age in her second year in Brooklyn Heights. Ellie Simpson's another young lady who we've seen on the NEC-9 a couple of times with her highlight reel plays. So really the Terriers are a team that wasn't expected to do much. Thurston, people were thinking that he could get it done, but it was going to take a little longer. But they've seen immediate results. They are their stamina, their endurance, their physicality, everything has taken a step up in their first year under the new head coach. So 7-5, they're in 5th place, and they're vying for a home playoff game, John. Things are looking up in Brooklyn Heights.
Another team that's really jumped into the mix is the Robert Morris Colonials, back-to-back wins last week, Ralph.
Absolutely. Robert Morris is a team that has always been in the mix as long as Sal Buscalia has been there, the head coach. He's been there for quite some time. He came from Manhattan, where he won a MAC championship and then came into the NEC after winning that MAC championship, and took Robert Morris's program to the next level. But regardless, as far as this year goes for Robert Morris, they've been ravaged by injury. They've been beaten down. They lost a couple of players before the year even started. They lost their starting point guard early on. Then they had a rookie sensation, Lou Matali from France. She was doing quite well. She goes down with an injury. We don't know when, if she'll be back this year, what the timetable is on that. So really, they've been hit with one thing after another, but they've responded, and they've seemed to have found themselves now, and are really clicking. They lost 4 straight in conference play at one point, but since then they're 4-2. They've won 3 of their last 4, and they're 6-6 right now in the mix. They have a very big game coming up on Saturday when they play Sacred Heart, second place Sacred Heart. So they took down St. Francis U this past weekend. Great win. Now they'll get a chance to make it another big win when they play Sacred Heart, defending champion Sacred Heart, this weekend. So things are really looking up for Robert Morris.
On the tube, NEC basketball always brings the heat. Playoff implications for an early game at noon with Central Connecticut and Mount St. Mary's.
Absolutely. Central Connecticut and Mount St. Mary's will be our featured game on the television this week. It's significant in the sense that both of those teams are tied for 6th place right now in the Northeast Conference standings, and we know the 8th spot is the cutoff for the postseason. Central is 5-5. Of course, they haven't played this past week because of the weather. Mount St. Mary's 6-6, so they're both even with a 500 win percentage. And this head-to-head battle on Saturday that you'll be able to see on ESPN3, live on ESPN3, by the way, this battle may go a long way when it comes to sorting out the standings toward the end of the year, especially if there are ties, tiebreakers, and such. So a very big one to watch on TV. And, of course, you also have that Robert Morris Sacred Heart game that we mentioned earlier. Should be a great Saturday for NEC Hoops.
Great stuff, Ralph. For Ralph Entry, I'm John Kelly Jr. This has been the NEC On The Run Women's Hoops Podcast.
This is Ralph Entry with the Northeast Conference, and we're welcoming on the program today Sacred Heart women's basketball head coach Ed Swanson. Coach Swanson, thanks for joining us today and taking a few minutes of time to talk some NEC hoops with us.
Thanks, Ralph. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Now, Coach, just last night you won your 400th game on the Sacred Heart sidelines. When this whole journey started years ago in the early 90s, did you ever think we would be talking here 400 wins later?
No, I wouldn't. You know, I got into coaching basketball because of my passion for it, and I thought I had a knack for teaching it. I didn't have a great knack for playing it, that's for sure. But, you know, it started off just as a passion, and it kind of grew from there. I really never dreamed of 400 wins, you know, not even 100 wins. So it's a great accomplishment for our program, I think, more so in regards to, in our university, in regards to some of the talented young women we've been able to attract to our campus and who have played for me. And, it's more of a program award.
Well, you mentioned the program. Can you talk a little bit about the process of building that program and also kind of the benchmarks that program hit along the way over the course of these 400 wins?
Yeah, I thought when I found out that it was my 400th win, I kind of went back to the Division II days and some of the players that were non-scholarship that really played for the love of the game, and that's where I kind of got my start, and it kind of ignited a little fire underneath me. And then, when we moved into the Northeast Conference in 1999-2000, I think of the players that laid the foundation in regards to Brooke Kelly, Brooke Rutnick, and the Ashley Coles and the Ashley Dermers, players who kind of gave us that instant respectability within the region in terms of Division I. And, they just did a tremendous job of laying that foundation, and that allowed us to attract that next class of players in regards to Amanda Pape, Jasmine Walker, Carrie Burke, who really carried the torch and got us rolling and got us, our first championship in 2006. And then, right through it to Caitlin Sawinski, Elisa Appo, Callan Taylor. I mean, it's just, those were the first thoughts I think that came through my mind, when I, recollect on 400 victories. I think, of those players who all played such an important part, some of them who didn't have that championship, on their desk today, but, really were the foundation to our program and where we are today.
So you mentioned the student athletes you had during the Division II days, and then the first class you had at Sacred Heart, and of course you go on to mention a laundry list of names. A number of those names were all conference, were all Northeast Conference players. Alyssa Appo, Player of the Year. Amanda Pape was a Player of the Year. Caitlin Sawinski, an NEC Tournament MVP. So obviously these players went on to succeed in the Northeast Conference. So now talking about the Northeast Conference in particular, how did the league evolve over the course of time since you've been a member, and over the course of you piling up all these victories and having a number of these players come and go? What changes did you see in the Northeast Conference landscape amongst that time?
Well, I really think it starts with the administrations. I really think putting an emphasis on, being good in women's basketball. And, we've always had that emphasis here at Sacred Heart University. And I think, when I look at the coaches that we have in our conference now, I think it starts right there. I think we have tremendous coaches that can recruit, that are great tacticians on the floor. And, I think it starts with their ability to recruit tremendous players and then organize them in a championship way. I look back at some of the, championships that we won, and, I'm not so sure we were the best team on the floor or in the conference that year. We just happened that, our luck went our way a little bit. But the league has grown leaps and bounds. I believe we were, 15th in the RPI last year. And, if we can continue to grow, there's no reason to think that we can't get an at-large bid and get two teams in the NCAA tournament, sometime in the near future. But our conference is growing leaps and bounds, and I'm real excited in the direction it's going.
And you mentioned the improvement in the conference's RPI rank. 2 years ago, 18, and that was a watershed season. And then last year, up to 15 in the country, so in the top half of America amongst Division I conferences. So obviously there's some evidence right there. What about the competitiveness of NEC teams, or even your teams in particular, going up against the upper echelon of Division I? I know that you have played UConn a number of times over the years, and you have played a lot of programs from major conferences, Boston College this year, who you guys have knocked off. What can you say about the NEC's team's competitive and your program's competitiveness against the next step up, so to speak?
Well, I think the coaches really have done a real good job in regards to schedule. And I think if you're going to talk the talk, then you better walk the walk. And I think you have to go out there and schedule big, and we have to dream big. And, we can't just stay pat, especially as a mid-major conference. You just can't say, all right, we're good, we're satisfied where we are. I think it's crucial that we do go out there and schedule BCS schools. It's hard for us to get BCS schools on our campus, but at neutral sites, in some of these tournaments, like we went out to Seattle to play Boston College. 2 years ago, we went down to the Bahamas to schedule Auburn. It's important that we not only play these schools, but we beat these schools, and that gives you that stamp of credibility, throughout the country, especially in the recruiting world. And you point right to Mount St. Mary's, who had a terrific win at Seton Hall. In the Big East, and there's been other schools in our conference that have scheduled up, and not only played the BCS schools, but we go out and we challenge the other conferences, and I think our overall record is pretty good against those conferences. So, it's important that we do go out and we schedule these schools. We schedule them in a way in regards to tournament sites where it's I wouldn't use the word easier, but it's more conducive to an upset, to a win, if you can play them on a neutral site opposed to their home floor.
Now, what would you say the next step is, both for your program and for the NEC in this progression?
Well, I think the next step is we've got to continue to increase our RPI. We've got to continue to move up in the seeding category. And the next step is for us to really have a breakthrough team and a breakthrough game where we move forward in the NCAA tournament. I mean, that's my goal here. I cherish every Northeast Conference championship, and I cherish getting to the NCAA tournament. But last year when we played Georgia Tech, there was a sense of disappointment in our locker room that we thought that was our chance to break through there. So it's back to the drawing board, and we're at it again, and we got to go through the rigors of a extremely tough Northeast Conference schedule. And, we've got to continue to improve, continue to get better, to give ourselves another opportunity at another championship, to give ourselves another opportunity of moving forward in the NCAA tournament. But I really think that's the next step here for the Northeast Conference.
Well, you've heard it from the man who has more Northeast Conference victories than anyone in the history of the Women's Basketball League. Ed Swanson, we really appreciate your time in joining us here on the NEC On The Run podcast. Best of luck to you in taking that next step, Coach.
Thanks, Ralph. I appreciate it.
This is the NEC 9, the top 9 plays on the hardwood. Kicking things off at number 9, we have St. Francis Brooklyn's Ellie Simpson, who hits the deck and converts against Bryant. Number 8, Riot's Corey Maynard with a pitcher-perfect pick and roll to Vlad Kotradiev for St. Francis Brooklyn. Number 7, we have NEC 9 regular DeJuan Anderson with an emphatic slam off the Kenneth Ortiz feed against RMU. Number 6, we go back to Wagner and Jonathan Williams with a volleyball-like spike versus Robert Morris. At number 5, Robert Morris, super sophomore Lucky Jones with the acrobatic finish against in-state rival St. Francis U. We've had plenty of follow slams on the NEC 9 this winter, and at number 4, here's another with Robert Morris's Stephen Hawkins against Wagner. Number 3, we have Wagner high flyer Mario Moody on the alley-oop from Kenneth Ortiz. Number 2 on the NEC-9, it's LIU's Jamal Olasawir with a thunderous left-hander against Central Connecticut State. And to cap it off at number 1, we have NEC assist leader Jason Brickman threading the needle with a long bounce pass in transition to CJ Garner for the reverse. That wraps it up for this week's NEC On The Run Hoops podcast. I'm John Kelly Jr. Stop by next week on NECFrontRow.com.